Right then, welcome to your orientation. I am Professor Psycho, or is it Insanity? I can never really remember. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we here have some wonderful benefits if you become my henchman or henchwoman. Depending, we don't judge. First off, dental. We do cover dental. And we have very good dental plans and rates. You can find more information about that in the pamphlets that I handed out. And what else? Oh, hearing. We cover hearing and vision. These are very important things, as you will be seeing and be around lots of loud noises and explosions. So we want to make sure that you stay in good physical condition, because we don't want you accidentally becoming deaf or losing eyesight, which happens. But if you do happen to lose an eye, we do have a coverage plan for getting you a prosthetic eye in placement. Now, I'm sure some of you are wondering, Professor, what are the hourly rates? Well, as you remember, this is a union job. You all are hired through a union, and you're encouraged to pay union dues in order to be a henchman. So you're salary-based, and we will do our best to give competitive salaries compared to working for other supervillains. So, what do you say? Are you ready to work for me and help me take over the world? Yes? Alright, yes, let's go. Henchmen. Every villain has a henchman. Be it the Joker, Lex Luthor, pretty much any major supervillain in comic books or in movies, or just arch enemies and the big bad evil guy in any campaign, they tend to have henchmen. The question is, where do they get these henchmen? Okay, you know, maybe the more important ones have like some sort of lore reason being there. Maybe they were saved by the big bad evil guy and they've devoted their life to them from now on. Maybe their town is ruled by the big bad evil guys, therefore they must do what they say, and so on. Or something like that. What about all the other mooks? Where do you get Henchman 1, Henchman 2, Henchman 55, and so on? Do you go to some sort of like major convention like Henchmen for Hire, you know? Or work for me and you can get, you know, dental. You know, each villain has his own little stall, you know, telling what the benefits are for working for him, and he tries to recruit as many henchmen as possible. That's every time I think it's like, how did this guy get all these people to follow him? And it applies to Dungeons & Dragons in a lot of ways, or any D20 game whatsoever, when it comes to essentially cutting through the trash mobs, as some people call them in MMOs. The minor mobs, or the minor, you know, creatures or villains that you fight, getting to the main villain. So, it's like, where did they get these henchmen? Did they, you know, just go to a town, it's like, hey, I'll give you 50 gold pieces each if you come defend my castle. And it'll be paid to you every month, you get 50 gold. Pretty good deal. Actually, it's a very good deal. It's more than what most make in most D&D worlds. So, does it work? And this is something I wanted to bring up, something I wanted to talk about on today's D20 Sundays, is the idea of henchmen. Where do they come from? Do we want to keep them just being random, faceless mobs that, you know, the players cut through as if they were toilet paper? Or do we want to give them some semblance of humanity? Maybe some semblance of sentience, and the fact that they might be redeemable in some sense, or that they are doing this because they have to, or because they have greed or something. Giving them some more depth when they interact with the players might not be necessary, but it's certainly something to think about. Sure, you know, your players might think of it, just something else I can, you know, sharpen my sword on. Or something else I can cleave in half. I don't know. It's just something that's been bothering me about it lately, and I've been thinking about is the idea of these trash mobs, these randos, these essentially henchmen that are expendable by any means as far as the villain is concerned. Where do they come from? How does the villain find this support? These people willing to work and die for him? And I feel like that's something that should be explored in a campaign, so it kind of makes sense as to how the villain grew to power to where the players can understand and possibly even fear him more. You know, well, how did this vampire come to power and have so many loyal followers? Well, he has the charm ability. So, you know, he can just go around charming each individual person to where they see him as, you know, their best friend ever, and they'll do anything for him. I feel like that's good, for one. That's a very good way of putting it. But at the same time, I feel like we should add more to it. Maybe he doesn't get all of the people underneath him that way. Maybe he gets key ones, key nobles, key generals, or lieutenants and captains and so on, who have the undying loyalty of their men. And that's how they keep control and they're able to get control. I don't know. That's something I wanted to think about in the sense that I'm trying to plan out more for this risking campaign where the players are going to start dealing with harder and more difficult beings and more essentially going against the odds more, where they're no longer going to be outnumbering their opponents, but their opponents are going to be vastly outnumbering them. The players will still have a good chance, but it's going to bring up the idea as to once in a while when they fight against obviously a group of NPCs that are underpowered to deal with the players, what made those NPCs attack the players? What made them driven to do so? Was it greed? Was it a sense of loyalty? Perhaps a sense of love, or so on? That way, these little individual randos, these little NPCs that have no real major significance, could have some significance to the players, even if they don't have much significance to the campaign. Perhaps they can help shape the ideas that the players have of the villain. It's like, oh, he forced this village to fight for him, or else he would destroy and lay waste to them. So now the village, out of fear, fights for him. Will the players fight these villagers and cut them down as if they were any other mook? Or they take pity and try not to kill or maim any of them, and instead do non-lethal damage. Try and find some way of freeing the village from the villain's grasp. These are things that cross my mind often when I'm writing a session. What about you, though? What do you do when it comes to your villains and their henchmen? Are the henchmen just expendable NPCs that you just throw at mass at the players? They have no real identity. They're all just the same, you know, fighter, thief, rogue, wizard, sorcerer, so on and so forth. Are they all the same mooks, or are they unique and different in a different way depending on what group that they travel with? Maybe one group is villagers that, you know, are recently recruited by one means or another. Or perhaps this group is, you know, much more seasoned warriors, and they're there because they are paid to do so, and they are loyal, or they're loyal to the person who has commanded them to do so. I feel like that's something that, as a Dungeon Master, we should consider. Because one, it affects the challenge rating. But two, it also gives us a narrative point in order to portray to the players. Is the villain using essentially an overpowering, you know, presence, or is he using fear and manipulating villagers to do what he needs, and make the players fighting as villagers to where if they kill the villagers, they're going to be seen as villains, or maybe even horrendous people themselves versus the villain. The villain's like, yeah, you know, I threatened to burn down their town, but you killed them all. You didn't spare a single one of them. You just cut them down as if they're nothing. And I thought I was evil. Things like that. In fact, I might use that at some point. Maybe not in the Source Game campaign, or maybe later in the campaign. I'm not sure. I'll decide. But I feel like that's an important thing to ask, is where does the villain get his henchmen? Because then that defines what kind of villain he is. Is he intimidation? Is he bribery? Is he what? How does he get people to follow him? If he can get people to follow him, how does he get them to willing to fight for him and die for him? These things define a villain, because a villain that's just psychotic and crazy and wanting to destroy everything, including anyone who follows him, no one's going to want to follow him, because they're going to die. It's like the Joker. I wonder, how does the Joker keep getting henchmen? And I realize, oh, he attracts other crazy people like him. And that's the reason why they stick around. They're not loyal to him, but they're crazy like him, that he's able to easily manipulate them into doing what he wants. And I feel like that is something worth talking about, something worth thinking about, something worth doing something with. Because like I said, you can easily use it to paint the players into a difficult situation. They're not fighting against trained soldiers. They're fighting against villagers who are trying to save their livelihoods. Even though the players might be the heroes, here they are having the choice of having to take time and find a way of subduing and possibly freeing this village from the villain's grasp and letting the villain get further out of their reach. Or do they cut through the village and just, cut through them regardless, just so that way they can get a step closer and closer to the villain than they were before. Anyways, that's what I wanted to put forward for this D20 Sundays. Nice little brain scratcher of that. I'll catch you in the next one.